Christianity, while it stands as one of the world's largest religions, its roots have barely scratched the surface in the vast regions of the East. What stopped this globally influential faith from taking deep root in lands dominated by ancient traditions like Hinduism, Buddhism, and Confucianism? In this video, let's explore why Christianity never really took over the East. Number 1. Presence of ancient Eastern religions. By the time Christianity had taken root and began to expand from the Middle East, much older belief systems already existed in the East. These traditions had shaped societal structures, values, and cultural practices for centuries. In China, there was Taoism and Confucianism, while India had the Dharmic religions like Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism. These religions were also fundamentally different to Christianity in the values and beliefs they espoused. This meant that it was extremely difficult for a new religion like Christianity to enter and gain widespread acceptance. Number 2. Geographical and political barriers. For Christianity to spread, its missionaries needed to carry his message with them and evangelize in new regions. However, the enormous distances, formidable mountain ranges like the Himalayas, and vast deserts posed significant logistical challenges for early Christian missionaries. Because of these natural barriers, ideas couldn't flow easily between the West and the East. But there were political barriers as well that hindered Christianity's spread in the East. Powerful empires controlled trade routes and had their own state-sponsored religions or philosophies. It didn't suit their political interests for a new religion to come in and begin to take over. We know, for example, that the Tang dynasty in China was initially tolerant of the early Christian communities. The Xi'an stele, a stone slab discovered in China dating to 781 AD, documents 150 years of early Christianity in the region. But later on, Christianity was suppressed and Christians persecuted. The religion all but disappeared from China, and instead local religions were promoted. Number 3. Issues with the Nestorian Church. Christianity's early contact with the East was primarily through the Nestorian Christian Church. However, this branch of Christianity was controversial because of its belief that Jesus was simply a godlike man, and not God himself. Nestorianism was deemed heretical by mainstream Christian orthodoxy at the First Council of Ephesus in 431 CE. Unfortunately, although the Nestorian Church had a high level of zeal for foreign mission, they didn't have support from other Christian sects. Throughout the 6th century, they sent missionaries across Central Asia, the Mongolian Desert, China, and what is now India, establishing a large number of churches in these areas. For many of these regions, their first contact with Christianity was through the Nestorian Church. But because the church was cut off from the rest of the Christian world, there was no unified effort to evangelize. While Nestorianism found followers in places like Persia and China, its isolation from mainstream Christianity might have limited the growth of Christianity in the East. Number 4. The rise of Islam. Perhaps nothing was a greater barrier to Christianity's dominance in much of the East than the rise of Islam. By the 7th century, Islam began to spread rapidly across the Middle East and Central Asia. Within a relatively short period after the Prophet Muhammad's death in 632 AD, Muslim armies had conquered a vast territory spanning from Spain in the west to India in the east. Territories that once had significant Christian populations such as Persia were gradually Islamized. This not only halted Christianity's eastward expansion, but also led to its decline in regions it once flourished. As a result of the Islamic conquests, the center of gravity of Christendom began to shift towards Europe. You can still see evidence of these ancient Christian communities even today in the Middle East, like the Coptic Christians in Egypt or the Assyrian Church of the East in Iraq. However, they often represent minority communities in predominantly Muslim nations. Number 5. Cultural differences. For a new religion to be accepted, it has to be relatable to the cultural, social, and moral values of the society it seeks to penetrate. For example, as Christianity spread in the West, it integrated many of the local pagan practices to make the transition smoother for the people there. This was easier said than done in the East. Eastern societies had distinct worldviews, cultural practices, and philosophical traditions that were deeply rooted into the society. These differences sometimes made it difficult for Christianity, with its Middle Eastern and Greco-Roman roots, to resonate with Eastern sensibilities. For example, the Dharmic religions hold cyclical views of existence, while Taoism seeks harmony with the Tao, a fundamental principle that is the source of all existence. Shinto emphasizes the worship of spirits called kami, and the deep connection between humans, nature, and these deities. And Confucianism emphasizes ethical behavior and filial piety. In contrast, Christianity centers on the belief in a personal God and salvation through Jesus Christ. So it's easy to see how these differences would make it difficult for a new religion to gain widespread acceptance. Number 6. Colonial resistance. Although early Christians didn't have much success in the East, for all the reasons we've already mentioned, this changed during the Age of Exploration and the subsequent colonial era. But now it was associated with colonialism, which much of the native populations disliked and resisted. It was during this period that Christian missionaries began to spread the religion with fervor. As European imperial control expanded over parts of Asia, especially during the 19th century, Christian missionaries traveled to countries in the East. They established schools, hospitals, and other institutions, which also facilitated the spread of Christianity. The Portuguese, for example, carried out an aggressive Christianization campaign in India from the 16th century onwards. Hindu temples in Portuguese territories were destroyed and many cultural practices were outlawed. Many locals did convert, often due to force or socioeconomic benefits, but there was a profound mistrust and resistance against the colonial powers. This colonial connection meant that converting to Christianity was sometimes seen as betraying one's own culture and nation. As a result, Christianity was viewed by many as a foreign religion, one that belonged to the unwanted colonial powers. Number 7. Internal Christian divisions. The Christian world itself didn't have a unified mission. Differences between Catholic, Protestant, and Orthodox practices and beliefs, and sometimes competition among them, could hinder a unified approach to evangelism. It's hard enough to establish a new religion in regions that already had well-rooted faiths, but it's harder when different factions of the same religion are trying to outdo the other. So, there you have it. 7 major reasons that hindered the progress of Christianity in the East. While it did manage to create footholds, it was never able to take over these Eastern cultures as it did in the West. But there are some outliers where Christianity did take over or grow significantly. The Philippines is the largest Christian country in Asia, with the majority of its population being Roman Catholic. This is largely a result of over 3 centuries of Spanish colonization, during which Catholicism was fervently promoted. East Timor is another Southeast Asian nation where the majority of the population is Roman Catholic. The influence of Catholicism grew during Portuguese colonization and continued even after East Timor was annexed in 1976 by Indonesia, which is a majority Muslim country. South Korea is also another Asian nation where there's a significant Christian population, although it's not majority Christian. Christianity has grown rapidly in the country over the last century, and today it's one of the religions with a strong presence in South Korea, alongside Buddhism. Other countries in the Middle East, like Armenia, Georgia, Syria, and Lebanon, also have significant Christian populations. But regardless of all that, when you think of the religions of the East, Christianity isn't the first that comes to mind. What do you think? Were there other reasons that caused Christianity to remain a minority religion in much of the East? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and subscribe to our channel. It helps the mysterious algorithm do its thing so our channel can grow and we can continue making more content like this. Thanks for watching.